General Motors built many classic cars through the 1900s, but only a few carried true muscle under the hood. These are the 12 most powerful GM muscle cars ever produced, each built to rule the road. Number 12. 1962 Pontiac Catalina Super Duty. The year 1962 gave us something very special from Pontiac, the Catalina Super Duty. It was not just a car sitting pretty in the showroom. No, this machine was built to make people's jaws drop when it roared past. At that time, muscle cars were still new on the scene, but Pontiac wanted to show everyone what real strength on wheels looked like. And let's just say, the Catalina Super Duty didn't whisper, it shouted. Now, what made this car truly exciting was its heart, the Super Duty 421 cubic inch V8 engine. On paper, Pontiac said it had 405 horsepower, but those who knew the truth whispered, it is more like 460. That was a big secret, kind of like when you sneak cookies before dinner and pretend you didn't. The car's engine parts were not just thrown together either. Pontiac used forged rods, a strong crankshaft, solid lifters, and heads made for tough NASCAR races. It was like they built it to wrestle with speed itself. But Pontiac didn't stop with just power. They wanted the Catalina to be quick on its feet too. So they shaved off almost 150 pounds by using aluminum body panels and a lighter hood. That made the car not only strong, but also speedy. You could say it went on a diet, but instead of eating salads, it ate miles of road. Suddenly, this big car could move with surprising agility. Speaking of movement, let's talk about how it performed. The Catalina could fly from 0 to 60 miles per hour in only 5.4 seconds. For the early 1960s, that was lightning fast. Even better, it ran a quarter mile in 13.9 seconds, crossing the line at 107 miles per hour. Those numbers showed Pontiac's promise of raw speed and thrill. If you were sitting behind the wheel, you were basically holding on to a rocket with seatbelts. Pontiac also made sure this car had the right tools for the job. It came with twin Carter carburetors, each moving 500 cubic feet of air every minute. Add in an aluminum intake manifold and a suspension system that kept it smooth. And suddenly the car wasn't just about going fast, it handled like a pro too. And when racers wanted even more, the exhaust system could easily be swapped out. It was like Pontiac handed you a toolkit that said, go ahead, break some records. Of course, all that power meant no room for fancy extras. The Catalina had simple tri-tone seats and a frame ready for racing. No luxury buttons to play with, but who needs buttons when you're too busy holding your breath as the speedometer climbs? Number 11, 1987 Buick Regal GNX. By the late 1980s, people thought muscle cars were starting to fade away. Then Buick rolled out the Regal GNX in 1987, and it shocked everyone. This car proved you didn't always need a V8 engine to be powerful. Instead, the GNX came with a turbocharged V6 that made drivers smile and competitors sweat. At the center of the GNX was a 232 cubic inch turbocharged V6 engine. For its time, this was high-tech and very advanced. It made 300 horsepower and 380 pound-feet of torque, which was more than enough to push the car forward with incredible force. The results were jaw-dropping, 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4.7 seconds. That was faster than many Ferraris, Porsches, and even Corvettes of that era. The top speed reached 124 miles per hour, which was more than enough to leave other cars staring at its taillights. But the GNX didn't stop with straight-line speed. It was also designed to handle the curves and turns that usually gave muscle cars trouble. Buick gave it a unique rear differential and a torque arm that helped the tires grip the road. Drivers said it felt like the car was glued down, even when cornering hard. That meant you could push it faster and still feel safe. And let's be honest, feeling safe while going really fast is kind of important unless you enjoy meeting trees up close. Another part of the GNX story was how rare it was. Buick only made 547 of these cars in that single year. That made it something special even back then, because not many people could actually get one. Today it is like finding a needle in a haystack, but a needle that can outrun your neighbor's sports car. On top of everything, the GNX had a style that matched its power. It came only in black paint, had 2 strong exhaust pipes, and an interior designed to feel like a cockpit. Sitting in one almost made you feel like a pilot about to take off. The whole car carried an attitude that said, "Yes, I am fast, and yes, you better believe it." Number 10. 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle LS6. In the year 1970, Chevrolet gave something unforgettable. The Chevelle LS6. It was the kind of machine that made heads turn the moment it showed up. People knew right away this Chevelle carried serious power, and they were right. Under its hood sat the mighty 454 cubic inch V8 engine. This engine delivered 450 horsepower along with 500 pound-feet of torque. That kind of strength was enough to launch the Chevelle from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds. For its top speed, it reached 108 miles per hour. Sure, it drank fuel fast, only about 9 miles per gallon, but no one cared. Back then, it wasn't about saving gas. It was about feeling the thrill of raw speed. Going deeper into the details, the LS6 had more than just a big engine. It came with an 800 cubic feet per minute Holley 4-barrel carburetor sitting on an aluminum intake manifold. This setup fed the motor lots of air and fuel, giving it even more muscle. Inside the engine, forged aluminum pistons and a forged steel crank kept things strong and reliable. The compression ratio was 11.25 to 1, which gave the engine a serious punch. And the cowl induction hood wasn't there to just look cool, it funneled cold air straight into the motor, almost like giving the car an energy drink every time you stepped on the pedal. On the outside, the 1970 Chevelle looked just as powerful as it was. The design had tougher front lines compared to earlier years. Rounded fenders were swapped for stronger edges, and rectangular parking lamps sat right under the headlights. A crisp body line ran from the front all the way to the back, making the car look fast even when it wasn't moving. Inside, Chevrolet gave the Chevelle an updated dash and interior design. It mixed sporty touches with just enough comfort to remind drivers they were still in a car built for the streets, not only the track, but once the driver pressed the gas, the Chevelle's true personality came alive. On the drag strip, the LS6 was a monster. It could run the quarter mile in under 14 seconds while hitting speeds over 100 miles per hour. Drivers loved it because it wasn't just a good-looking car. It was built to dominate the road and the race. Number 9. 1970 Plymouth Cuda 440+6. In 1970, Plymouth made sure nobody could ignore this masterpiece, the Cuda 440+6. With its bold, plum-crazy purple paint, it stood out even before the engine started. But the real magic was not just the color. The Cuda had the power and the performance to back up all that attention. At its heart was a 440 cubic inch V8 engine paired with a 6-pack carburetor system. That setup gave the car 390 horsepower, which was more than enough to shake the ground. The Cuda also came with a 4-speed manual transmission and the famous pistol grip shifter. Drivers loved it because grabbing that shifter made you feel like you were about to launch a rocket. But Plymouth gave choices too. That year, the Cuda lineup offered other engines like the 383 cubic inch V8 and even the mighty 426 Hemi. Still, the 440+ 6-pack struck the sweet spot between massive power and serious fun. The car sat on a 106-inch wheelbase and weighed about 3,100 pounds. That balance meant it didn't just go fast in a straight line. It handled turns with confidence too. Now, when we talk about special, the Cuda earns that word. Out of 48,800 Barracudas made in 1970, only 548 were convertibles. That made this version rare, the kind of car you might never see twice in a lifetime. And decades later, in the year 2000, one of these cars got a careful restoration. It received fresh purple paint, new carburetors, and small upgrades like a new ignition system and radiator hoses. It was like bringing back a legend with a fresh suit and a new pair of shoes. Step inside and the Cuda gave you black vinyl bucket seats, a Hurst pistol grip shifter, and a wood-rimmed steering wheel. The cockpit made you feel like a racer even before turning the key. The odometer read just over 800 miles after restoration, though the total was unknown. Either way, the car was ready to remind everyone why the 70s belonged to muscle. And honestly, when a car looks this good and runs this strong, who is stopping to check the mileage anyway? Number 8. 1969 Chevy COPO Camaro. The year 1969 brought us a Camaro that was not like the others. Chevy was already known for building fast cars, but they wanted something even stronger. Thanks to a clever trick called the Central Office Production Order, or COPO, dealers found a way to sneak a massive engine into the smaller and lighter Camaro. It was like putting a heavyweight boxer inside the body of a sprinter. At the center of this car's power was the 427 cubic inch big block V8 engine. On paper, it was rated at 425 horsepower, but everyone knew it felt even stronger than that. This was the same engine used in top Corvettes, but now it was stuffed into a Camaro that was lighter and quicker. Suddenly, the car became a rocket on wheels. You could almost hear the tires begging for mercy every time the driver pressed the gas pedal. The Copo Camaro actually came in two versions that year. The first was the COPO 9561 with the tough L72 iron block 427. About 1,015 of those were built, which made them popular among racers. But then came the rarer COPO 9560, hiding something very special under the hood. The ZL1 aluminum 427. Only 69 cars got that engine, making them almost like unicorns in the muscle car world. If you ever see one, you are luckier than finding $1 in your old jeans pocket. But Chevy didn't just stop at stuffing in big engines. They added clever features too, like the V75 liquid tire chain option. Yes, it really sprayed liquid onto the rear tires to help them grip better during burnouts. Imagine explaining that at a gas station. "Oh, don't mind me, just giving my tires a little shower." Everything about this Camaro screamed speed, strength, and pure excitement. The 1969 Copo Camaro was Chevy's idea, which worked perfectly. It gave the world one of the most powerful muscle cars ever made. Number 7, 1969, Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. The 1969 Pontiac had something new. While the GTO had long been the star of the lineup, Pontiac decided it was time for the Firebird to get its own spotlight. That decision brought us the very first Firebird Trans Am, a car that might have started small, but carried enough power and style to stand tall among the most respected muscle cars. This was no ordinary Firebird. Pontiac called it the Trans Am Performance and Appearance Package, and it came loaded with details that set it apart. Every model wore polar white paint with bold blue stripes running across the body. A 60-inch rear spoiler sat proudly on the deck lid, while dual scoops on the hood gave it the look of a car ready to breathe fire. On the fenders, small fiberglass vents worked as coolers, letting the hot air escape. If the outside looked fast, the inside was simple and purposeful, with bucket seats and an optional rally gauge cluster that could show a 160 mile-per-hour speedometer and an 8,000 RPM tachometer. That was serious race-inspired business. Underneath all the stripes and spoilers was the true heart of the car. Pontiac's Ram Air 400 cubic inch V8. The standard version, called Ram Air 3, made 335 horsepower. For drivers wanting more, Pontiac offered the Ram Air 4 with a hotter camshaft and extra tuning, good for 345 horsepower. Numbers like those meant this Firebird was not just a pretty face. Torque came in strong, and with gearing like 3.55 to 1 or 3.90 to 1, the car launched with real authority. Some even joked that you could skip leg day at the gym if you just drove one of these hard enough. Your neck would get plenty of exercise. Power was not the only thing Pontiac delivered. A heavy-duty suspension gave the Trans Am a sharp edge on winding roads. Test drivers of the day praised how it could carve corners without drama, passing long chains of cars on mountain roads without ever slowing down. That mix of handling and horsepower was rare in the late 60s, when many muscle cars focused only on straight-line speed. The Trans Am showed that Pontiac was thinking about both. Of course, this car was built in very small numbers. Only 697 coupes rolled out, along with just 8 convertibles. That means spotting one today feels like finding a 4-leaf clover in a field of grass. Back then, though, buyers might not have realized how special it was. Pontiac launched it with almost no advertising, letting it quietly slip into showrooms. Yet even with little promotion, it sent a clear message. The Firebird was no longer sitting in the shadow of the Camaro. It did not take long for the Trans Am to grow into Pontiac's performance flagship. eventually passing even the mighty GTO in popularity. But in 1969, it was just beginning its climb, armed with a big V8, sharp looks, and a name borrowed from racing, even if it never raced in the series itself. Number 6. 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. By the year 1970, Oldsmobile had something to prove. Pontiac had the GTO, Chevrolet had the Chevelle, and Buick had its GS, but Oldsmobile wanted a spot at the muscle car table too. The answer was the Oldsmobile 442 W30. A car that showed muscle could also come with brains, balance, and just a touch of comfort. At the middle of this car sat a massive 455 cubic inch V8 engine. Even in its base form, this engine was strong, but the W30 version made it even tougher. It was rated at 370 horsepower and a neck-snapping 500 pound-feet of torque. That much twisting force meant this car could move like a rocket, even while carrying its full-size body. Drivers joked that hitting the gas felt like having your stomach left behind at the stoplight. The W30 package came with special parts that made the car lighter and sharper. Oldsmobile used aluminum for the intake manifold, and even for pieces of the rear differential. The hood was fiberglass with working air scoops that helped the big engine breathe better. Every pound saved meant more speed, and Oldsmobile engineers treated weight the way kids treat broccoli, best to throw it out whenever possible. Power alone was not the story. The W30 also came with a 4-barrel carburetor, a hotter camshaft, and free-breathing exhaust pipes. Add a Hurst-shifted 4-speed gearbox or a performance-tuned automatic, and the car was ready to handle whatever the road or the drag strip threw its way. Standard front disc brakes and a strong suspension with sway bars, front and back, kept all that muscle under control. Not only this, the Oldsmobile reminded you it was still a Cutlass at heart. Plush bucket seats, a full console, and even air conditioning could be ordered. Some models carried 8-track players, which meant you could blast your favorite tunes while blasting down the quarter mile. Comfort mixed with performance in a way that made this car feel grown up compared to some of its rougher rivals. The year 1970 was the perfect moment for Oldsmobile. GM had lifted its rule against engines larger than 400 cubic inches, and Olds wasted no time putting the mighty 455 into the 442. The W30 was the best version of all, proving Oldsmobile was ready to compete with the strongest muscle cars of its era. Number 5. 1996 Chevrolet Impala SS. By the mid-1990s, Chevrolet brought serious power. The Impala name had long been tied to performance, but in 1996, the Impala SS returned as something bold and unexpected. It carried the size of a family sedan, yet it had the heart of a muscle car, ready to surprise anyone who thought otherwise. Under the cover sat a 350 cubic inch LT1 V8 engine, borrowed straight from the Corvette. This motor made 260 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. Numbers like that gave the Impala SS a punch that could push its heavy frame from 0 to 60 in just about 7 seconds. Not bad for a car that could also carry your groceries. Some owners joked that it was the only sedan where you could haul kids to school and still scare sports cars at stoplights. Now, Chevrolet did not just throw a Corvette engine into a Caprice and call it a day. They tuned the suspension to be lower and stiffer, which meant it handled better than the regular Caprice. Bigger brakes came standard, and the car rolled on wide tires that gripped the road tightly. It felt less like a floating couch and more like a muscle car in a tuxedo. Serious power, but still dressed for business. On top of that, the Impala SS also shared DNA with Chevrolet's police package Caprice, the 9C1. That meant tougher shocks, stronger springs, and a cooling system designed to handle high-speed chases. So yes, buying one was a little like owning your very own undercover cop car, minus the flashing lights, of course. Additionally, inside things kept their balance of comfort and performance. Bucket seats hugged the driver, while an SS logo sat proudly on the seats and the dashboard. The steering wheel carried a tiny bow tie badge, but everywhere else, the running Impala logo reminded you this was no ordinary sedan. It had enough space for the family, but the soul of the car begged to be driven hard. And while the regular Impala SS was plenty quick, tuners like Callaway went even further. Their supernatural SS package bumped horsepower over 400 added huge Brembo brakes, and turned the already strong sedan into a true street stormer. Suddenly, this full-size Chevy was cutting quarter miles in 14 seconds flat. That was enough to make even lightweight sports cars nervous when they pulled up next to it. Number 4. 1966 Chevrolet Chevelle L78. When the year 1966 rolled in, Chevrolet brought out a Chevelle that carried both muscle and style. The L78 version made people stop and stare, the kind of car that let everyone know the driver had something powerful under the hood. The heart of this Chevelle was the big 396 cubic inch V8 engine. Officially, it gave 375 horsepower and 415 pound-feet of torque. In simple words, that meant the car could push hard and keep going strong. This kind of strength launched the Chevelle from 0 to 60 miles per hour in only 6.5 seconds. For the 1960s, that was very fast. Its top speed was around 120 miles per hour, which probably made drivers feel like superheroes. Sure, it got about 12 miles per gallon, but back then, nobody was worried about gas. Fun mattered more than fuel bills. Moving forward to the outside, Chevrolet gave this car a brand new look for the year. The body sat lower and wider, which gave it an aggressive stance. The blacked-out grille and 4 headlight setup made it look serious, while the fake hood intakes added extra attitude. At the back, the flying buttress rear window gave it a modern touch. Park this car anywhere, and suddenly every other car on the lot looked shy. Of course, the Chevelle didn't just rely on looks. Chevrolet made sure its performance matched the bold design. That L78 engine was built for people who wanted more than just driving. They wanted racing. Drag racers loved it because it could deliver both strength and speed. Out of more than 70,000 Chevelles sold that year, only 3,099 had this special L78 engine. That made it a rare sight, like spotting your teacher at the grocery store and realizing they actually eat food too. Stepping inside, the Chevelle Supersport had a mix of comfort and toughness. The all-vinyl interior borrowed a bit of Malibu style, but carried a muscle car spirit. The dashboard and trim gave you the feeling that you weren't just cruising, you were in control of something serious. Chevrolet even added rib body accents, twin air intakes, and unique wheel covers to finish off its strong look. Every little detail reminded the driver this was no ordinary Chevelle. Number 3. 1973 Pontiac Trans Am SD 455. By the early 1970s, many people thought the muscle car era was nearly over. Rules about emissions, lower compression engines, and fuel changes were choking the fun out of performance. Most cars rolling off assembly lines were slower than the ones just a few years before. But then Pontiac quietly delivered a surprise. In 1973, they released a car that no one expected could exist under those strict rules. That car was the Trans Am SD 455. Now, the letters SD did not stand for somewhat decent. They stood for Super Duty, and Pontiac meant it. This was no ordinary 455 cubic inch V8. The block had extra metal in key spots. The crankshaft was carefully treated for strength, and the connecting rods and pistons were forged for toughness. Engineers even added special cylinder heads that let air and fuel move smoothly into the chambers. The result was an engine that looked plain on the outside but was secretly built to handle over 6,000 revolutions per minute. Talk about hiding muscles under a suit. The official rating was 310 horsepower, but here's the wink-wink secret everyone knew. The real number was higher. Pontiac might have been playing it safe with insurance companies, but drivers quickly learned this motor had far more punch than the brochure suggested. And the torque? Over 500 pound-feet. That kind of twist meant you could leave the stoplights so hard your passengers might spill their sodas. What made this even more amazing was that the car passed all the new government emission rules. It used exhaust gas recirculation and ran on regular 91-octane fuel, yet it still pulled strong. Testers at the time could hardly believe it. With a curb weight of about 3,800 pounds and an automatic transmission, the SD 455 Trans Am stormed through the quarter mile in just under 14 seconds at more than 100 miles per hour. One magazine even clocked it at 13.54 seconds. For a street car in 1973, that was rocket ship territory. And while the engine was the star, the rest of the car made sure the power was usable. A reinforced turbo 400 automatic came with unique shift points. The rear axle gearing was set for strong launches, and the suspension was tightened to handle all that power without turning the ride into a wobbly mess. Wide tires and functional air intakes on the shaker hood added both grip and personality. Some joke that even the hood scoop looked eager to inhale a burger if left too close to the car. Visually, the Trans Am was pure muscle. The 1973 version wore bold graphics, a deep front chin spoiler, and a massive rear wing. Most were finished in Buccaneer red, giving it a fiery look that matched its fiery engine. Step inside and you've got a sporty cockpit with round gauges, bucket seats, and that famous Pontiac feel, where you knew the car wanted to go fast even before the key was turned. Against all odds, Pontiac engineers Herb Adams, Skip McCulley, and Tom Nell pushed this car into production. Many inside GM thought it was impossible, but the team proved them wrong. The result was a car that stood out as one of the strongest muscle machines of the 70s, and the SD 455 became a legend that drivers still talk about today. Number 2, 1970 Buick GSX, Stage 1. When General Motors lifted its 400 cubic inch rule in 1970, the doors flew open for more power than ever before. That single move brought to life some of the strongest muscle cars Detroit had ever seen. Buick, a brand not always known for burning rubber, decided to join the fight in a big way with the GSX Stage 1. The GSX started as a Grand Sport 455, which itself was already serious business. Buick gave it a brand new 455 cubic inch V8 engine, the biggest engine the company had ever put in a muscle car. This motor was rated at 350 horsepower in standard form, but the Stage 1 version pushed that number up to 360. And the torque? A shocking 510 pound-feet at just 2,800 RPM. That is enough twisting force to make even a freight train jealous. Push the gas pedal too hard, and you might think the earth itself just tilted. Speaking of stunning looks, Buick gave the GSX a look you could not miss. It wore bold stripes down the body, a rear wing, and a spoiler up front. Buyers only had 2 color choices: Saturn yellow or Apollo white. Even the names carried big energy. Saturn and Apollo were tied to the rockets that sent astronauts to space. So yes, this car was basically a moon mission with seatbelts. But it was not all about bright paint and stripes. The GSX also packed a heavy-duty suspension, disc brakes up front, and wide tires on 15-inch wheels. These upgrades kept all that torque from spinning the car into the nearest ditch. Buick even included a hood-mounted tachometer, so drivers could keep an eye on engine speed without taking their eyes off the road. And if you ordered the Hurst-shifted 4-speed, you had yourself a proper muscle car cockpit. Of course, the real magic came from the Stage 1 package. It was more than just an engine tune. Buick added bigger valves, stronger springs, a hotter camshaft, and reworked cylinder heads. The carburetor was also adjusted for better fuel flow. On paper, the horsepower only went up by 10, but in the real world, most testers believed the engine was easily over 400 horsepower. Buick might have played coy with the numbers, maybe to keep the insurance companies from fainting. What mattered most was how it performed. Motor Trend tested a GSX Stage 1 and ran the quarter mile in just over 13 seconds at more than 105 miles per hour. That was enough for the magazine to call it the quickest American production car they had ever tested. Other reviewers landed in the high 13-second range, but either way, this Buick proved it was no slowpoke. Out of 687 GSX models built in 1970, only 400 came with the Stage 1 upgrade. That made it rarer than many of its rivals, and even more respected. Drivers often nicknamed it the Hemi Killer, because it could hold its own against Chrysler's mighty 426 Hemi cars. And yes, it also had air conditioning, something most muscle cars could not manage. Who says you cannot outrun everyone else and stay cool while doing it? Number 1, 1965 Pontiac GTO. By the middle of the 1960s, car fans had a new word stuck in their minds: escalation. It meant things were getting bigger, stronger, and faster. For Pontiac, escalation had only one shape: the GTO. After the success of the 1964 model, the company decided to raise the bar in 1965, giving muscle car fans even more of what they wanted: power, style, and attitude. The 1965 GTO carried Pontiac's famous 389 cubic inch V8 engine. This was no small talk. It came standard with 335 horsepower and and a 10.75 to 1 compression ratio. Drivers who wanted more could choose the tri-power setup, which used 3 two-barrel carburetors. That version gave a mighty 360 horsepower. For a mid-60s car, this was like strapping a rocket under the hood. If you pressed the gas pedal too hard, your hair might have needed its own seatbelt. Now, Pontiac didn't just stop at giving the GTO raw power. They made smart changes inside the engine. The cylinder heads were reshaped to let air and fuel flow better, and the intake runners were tuned for stronger performance. Put all that together, and you had a motor that didn't just roar, it sang like a choir, only much louder and with more smoke from the tires. On the outside, the 1965 GTO stood tall, with a sharper and cleaner look compared to the year before. Pontiac stacked the headlights vertically instead of horizontally, wrapped the taillights into the quarter panels, and gave the grille a blacked-out style. The hood had a single scoop in the middle, a clear reminder that this car wasn't built to sit quietly in a driveway. Even standing still, it looked ready to pick a fight with anything at the stoplight. Stepping inside, Pontiac gave buyers bucket seats covered in Morocide vinyl, and if you had some extra change, you could add a rally gauge cluster with an 8,000 RPM tach, oil pressure, and water temperature gauges. The steering wheel could be upgraded too, and the long console between the seats made shifting even more fun. The door panels proudly showed the words GTO 396 cubic inch, so no one riding shotgun would forget what kind of car they were in. But power is no fun without control, right? Pontiac made sure the GTO had stronger springs, shocks, and a bigger front stabilizer bar. The car sat on 14-inch wheels with red striped tires that made it stick to the road a little better. And for those who love speed, there were gear choices. The base was a 3-speed manual, but drivers could also pick a 4-speed manual with a Hurst shifter or even a 2-speed automatic. Of course, the 4-speed was the hot ticket. Nobody brags about going fast with only 2 speeds. To make things even better, Pontiac offered the fresh air package late in the year. This was basically a ram air system with a special hood scoop that fed cooler air into the engine. Officially, Pontiac still rated the tri-power engine at 360 horsepower, but everyone knew the numbers were a little shy of the truth. When the 1965 GTO hit the streets, it was Pontiac's way of saying, "Let's see if you can catch me." That's all for today. If you like this video, be sure to give a thumbs up, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel.